Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Yo, to Bolt fam, it's the director. Chargers fans, I got a really awesome one whipped up for you guys today. Derwin James, we know him, we love him, we know the kind of impact that he can have for the Chargers this season and going forward, but I do firmly believe that Derwin James is in for a monster season here in 2022. And this video is going to revolve around Derwin James, his involvement, and his roles with the team. Because Derwin might be one of the most unique and important players in the NFL. Brandon Staley understands the importance of Derwin, especially in his new system. As a matter of fact, I feel like Brandon proclaimed that he would not only surround Justin Herbert with weapons, but he would also do the same for Derwin James on defense, because you could really look at Derwin James as the quarterback, the leader that we've got for the Chargers on defense, and a really, really good one at that. And it's scary to think about Derwin when given reinforcements. As he said that he wanted to give backups not just to Justin Herbert, but Derwin as well. He backed that up, man. He added a ridiculous amount of star power to this roster, which in turn will free up Derwin James to really show us what he's got at every level of this defense. This team is going to thrive under Derwin's leadership, but equally as important, we're going to really see what he can offer as a player on the football field, which is really exciting to think about. So today, I wanted to explain why I think Derwin is going to see his best season in the NFL so far, which is actually really saying something. He's one of the best players in the league today, while also diving into why I think he's a very strong candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. Derwin is going to be an absolute beast this season. Before we do get started, guys, question in the comments like we always do, right? How many interceptions do you feel Derwin will go for here in 2022 while being surrounded with so much talent? Let me know in the comment section below. Before we do kick off, guys, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. The small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into this one. Lights, camera. Derwin James, a monster season approaching. Now, before we dive into this real deep, guys, I did want to give you an update, small update on the channel and pretty much the design of it. For those of you guys that didn't know, this channel started as a gaming channel, Madden as a matter of fact, and you'll notice that my old logo had a controller on the top left-hand corner there. No longer. This channel has been transformed into an amazing community of Super Chargers fans, and I wanted to reflect that. So you guys will see a whole bunch of changes coming through aesthetically for the channel over the next week or so, updating to the new logo and updated animations, etc., etc. So let's get into this one, man. Derwin James and the potential that he carries here in 2022. And we're going to start from the top, all right? Now, this doesn't mean that we're going to go all the way back to like 2018 when he was first drafted, right? We're not going to dive deep into his background that bad, but this is more to reflect where he is now. He's starting this season as one of the best defensive players in the league, and I do think he is going to grow exponentially this season. Yes, we did get incredibly lucky in 2018, right, with the epic slide, but Derwin, aside from his 2019 due to injury, has been nothing short of spectacular, right? In this time with the Chargers, Derwin has logged 257 tackles, 14 for loss, 5.5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 5 interceptions, and just over 36 games. Now, these stats are impressive, but what's even more impressive is what the stats will not tell you, right? His effect that he has had on this defense goes beyond big plays and big stats. It's how he elevates every level of this defense with the kind of level of play that he brings pretty much to every level of defense. He's a Swiss Army knife that can literally do it all, and I think a lot of Chargers fans understand this. And I can't really recall very many players in the NFL that can do that right now. They can't match his versatility. Line him up underneath, over top, wherever on the field, he's going to play at a very elite level. This man is really the ultimate chess piece. His versatility has firmly placed Derwin in the best possible position to make big plays, especially this season, right? The only issue that he's seen in the past is that he's not always been available to move around as freely as he will this season. I feel like a lot of people are seeing a season like this up and coming, but I did want to do something a little bit special in order to reflect that, right? And we got some cool graphics on the way, but real quick, firstly, it's going to come down to the reinforcements, right? What Brandon Staley stated earlier in the offseason and getting Derwin James, surrounding him with talent, he did back it up. In 2020, this is why this season is so important for Derwin James and maybe a potential breakout 2.0 year for him, okay? Derwin, like a lot of other players on this defense, needed a lot of help, right? And he needed help in order to get free. We think a lot about Joey Bosa. We talk a lot about him on this channel. He's going to see a huge boost this year with help from Khalil Mack, right? Both those edge rushers, all linebackers, these guys will additionally see some help from Sebastian Joseph Day and Austin Johnson plugging up the middle. And then Asante Samuel, Mike Davis, Derwin James, these guys are going to see help from Jackson and Bryce Callahan. Derwin actually benefits from every single one of these signings, especially in the secondary. So that's where we're gonna start here, guys. And this is where things get kind of fun. I put together a little chart to kind of move around formations and stuff in real time to kind of show how the Chargers like to utilize Derwin James and why the strength of his presence is going to be inflated here in 2022. So let's start off with this topic, the definition of X factor, okay? I feel like there's maybe 4 or 5 different positions that Derwin could play at any time, right? And he really does excel at all of them. He can't just perform, he can perform at a very elite level. Now, firstly, Derwin James listed as a safety, right? And this is, where he's best known, and he's a beast at this position, as we know as Chargers fans. He can play whatever role is asked of him from the safety position as well. He can play, strong safety, offering, help versus the run, as we see him often do with this team. He can play the free safety role if you wanted to switch him and Nasir Adderley around to play out deep. He's very, very good. He's also, and this can also be referred to like the strong and weak side. So depending on the offensive formation, he could be lined up here as the run support, or here for the run support, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not as deep in my X's and O's as some of you guys here on the channel as fans. So let me know if there's any corrections. I'm going to do my very best to show it how I understand it. All right. Additionally, he could play this position at multiple distances from the line of scrimmage as well, right? He could play a little bit closer, as we've seen in games past. And it does feel like that offers him a little bit more in terms of coverage, especially when it comes to tight ends, which we're going to get to in just a little bit. Now, he shared this role primarily with Nasir Adderley and Alohi Gilman last season, and we're going to get into why that's important as we move along. Next, we've kind of got box safety, right? So imagine, this being your basic formation right here. We're going to move some pieces around. Let's say in lieu of Kenneth Murray, who we're going to put, down here in the reserves, this little red area. Let's say Derwin James wants to enter into the fold from this position. Almost think of him as a hybrid linebacker role for Derwin James. And in this role, we're mainly going to see this in dime or nickel. Derwin will defend the middle of the field in a variety of different ways. And in this position, you're going to see other guys step in, and we're going to get into why it's so important to add a guy like JT Woods here in a little bit, okay? Now, Derwin James playing the hybrid linebacker role, he's capable of shooting gaps, defending the run, or rushing the passer from the inside. But in my opinion, his coverage is the best you could possibly get over the middle when playing in formations like this, when getting him closer to the line of scrimmage. He can do an exceptional job here defending against bigger targets like tight ends, like we mentioned, okay? And again, more on that in just a second. Next, we do have the star position, which right now Bryce Callahan is manning in this formation. And star basically means your slot defender, right? Your slot cornerback. And I view the situation where, let's say the Chiefs line up a guy like Travis Kelce around here, right? In this position of the field in the slot. And you want a bigger bodied guy that can go ahead and defend against him. Well, that's where you're going to want to put Derwin James, right? Right in that star position to defend against a guy like Travis Kelce in the slot. And you can count on Derwin to shut down some of the best players in the NFL, especially tight ends, kind of being our secret weapon versus that position, right? And in this instance, you probably still have a guy like JT Woods, maybe even Bryce Callahan. We'll get, and again, we're going to get into those in a second. It's very important to explain that kind of individually. So very, very cool that he can play the star position, basically your slot cornerback, and be the kind of that shutdown guy, right? He's so shut down versus tight ends. I do recall a game, I think even last season, of the Chargers versus the Kansas City Chiefs, right? And in that game, Derwin had shut down Travis Kelce pretty much the entire day. He was absolutely unstoppable in his coverage versus Travis Kelce. And at one point in that game, he had to step off the field. I think it was just for one series. And you know what happened in that one series? The Kansas City Chiefs were able to drive with like 3 or 4 receptions to Travis Kelce, and it ended up in a very quick score for Kansas City. But when on the field, players like, Kelce, Waller, Mark Andrews, those really, high elite tight ends, they're much smaller threats versus the Chargers when Derwin James is in coverage versus them. All right. And additionally, Derwin is a threat to maybe even attack the quarterback from this position. Staley's probably foaming at the mouth with how, he can get his secondary involved in the pass rush as well. Guys like Bryce Callahan, also known for getting to the quarterback from the star, aka slot position as well. And then finally, we've got what's called the X position. And I think I read this on a Daniel Popper article. If you guys haven't checked out The Athletic, it's definitely a great little source of Chargers, nuggets of knowledge. This X position feels like it was invented by a Brandon Staley. And this one's kind of wild, okay? So imagine for a second Derwin James taking on the role of a hybrid edge defender, right? Let's line him up right here next to Khalil Mack. And in this instance, I think the Chargers, if I remember correctly, they alluded to moving one of these defensive linemen out and basically playing Joey Bosa, Joseph Day, and Khalil Mack down low, right? Additionally, you had Derwin James and your slot guy. Let's bring Bryce Callahan back in here on one side. And then you had guys like Asante Samuel Jr., J.C. Jackson, J.T. Woods, Nasir Adderley defending the top. Most of the time, the Chargers will have a cover 2 shell sort of thing. You're always going to see maybe 2 safeties on the field for the most part, right? Moving Derwin James down here as a hybrid edge defender is kind of crazy, right? Because the trick here is you can do whatever you want with him from this spot, right? You can drop him into coverage, press the line to rush, you can spy, you name it, he can do it. And you add up all of these talents, again, this being probably the most ludicrous, but one that we've seen a lot of success with the Chargers and Derwin James in years past. You kind of add all of these talents up from every level on the field. It's next to impossible to predict what Derwin is going to do next, where he's going to line up next if you are an opponent of the Chargers in any given game. And this creates frustration for opponents. And because Derwin doesn't just play all these roles well, he plays them at an elite level. It's especially problematic for opposing offenses in the league because he's not always been able to flex these talents, right? And we've seen it kind of here and there, but it's mainly due to position scarcity that we haven't seen the full version of this come into effect yet for the Chargers. So let's do a quick reset here, right? Let's go ahead and get these guys in their appropriate positions, and we'll start kind of tinkering around with this lineup to kind of explain why these additions of these superstars is so important for the Chargers going forward. So there's a nice little good reset there in a 3-4. So holding down the fort or overloading circuits is kind of the next thing I wanted to talk about. This is where the plethora of stud signings really comes into effect. And it's quite impressive to see how everything's kind of shaped and come together for Derwin James, Brandon Staley, and the Chargers defense. When Derwin has been moved in the past, it has led to vacancies being left at the position that he's moving, away from. When Derwin was moved in the past, let's say the Chargers move him into the box right here, right? In the past, you've seen guys like Alohi Gilman or even Nasir Adderley try and fill that role. They had to get another body up there, right? Alohi Gilman, Nasir Adderley, Mark Webb playing safety while he played in the box last season is kind of what I'm trying to allude to here. And while these players have shown to be okay at times, let's actually go ahead and put Derwin here for a second and JT Woods. He can represent a guy like Alohi Gilman last season. While these players have been good at times, we've also noticed a sharp drop-off in quality of play at those positions when compared when, Derwin James, when he's playing in that natural position. And additionally, when Derwin is moved around, let's say, let's actually put him here for a second. Let's say we put Derwin James in the box. And let's have him and Kyle Van Noy in at one time, right? Additionally, when playing in the box, he was playing next to, let's say, a Drew Tranquill or a Kenneth Murray at any given time. That's pretty good, and it does, provide a variety of different talents, you could say. Like a Drew Tranquill, pretty decent overall, good in coverage, good versus the run. Kenneth Murray, mainly good versus the run, getting to the quarterback. Now you're adding another option in Kyle Van Noy, right? And that does add a little bit more help to Derwin James when moving around the field a little bit, if that makes sense, right? All these players can be good, but the best version of Derwin that you're going to get is when surrounding him with quality players wherever he happens to be on the field. Again, is kind of what I'm trying to allude to. So let's start at safety again, right? Pretty simple. Derwin James, we'll move him back to safety, and we're going to go ahead and put Kenneth Murray back in here, okay? When in this formation, Derwin James is going to play with Nasir Adderley up top, right? And that leaves no vacancies. It's a strong position for him. Nas is a decent deep safety. I think he's going to be just fine there, right? And this is one that doesn't require very much explanation. This is where we've mainly seen Derwin James in years past. But then let's talk a little bit about box safety. Once again, moving Derwin James here into the box. Who's going to step up and fill that vacancy for Derwin James? Well, this season, it's going to be a hybrid maybe of JT Woods and Alohi Gilman, right? And those are pretty strong players stepping in his stead at this time, but it doesn't just stop with them there, right? JT Woods, to me, I feel like he can play deep safety beautifully, and he carries a lot of potential, but he still is a rookie. Still, I feel like that's a big reason why JT Woods kind of shocked a lot of people this season. We didn't really see that pick coming, but it's because I feel the Chargers have foresight in mind to make sure wherever Derwin James is stepping away from, there's big playability left on the field, and in that case, it's a guy like JT Woods. But you've also got guys like Bryce Callahan that can do the same thing, right? He can play up top as well. So let's put JT Woods down here and Bryce Callahan up here. And that's pretty significant. And this is something that the Chargers are not unfamiliar with, right? The Chargers used Chris Harris Jr. last season in these situations a lot, when healthy, of course. And keeping these options in the back of your mind as we move forward is important, because this is rather significant in terms of quality coverage. Bryce Callahan manning up top is very, very cool. And in this instance, let's say, we need another slot defender in there. I should have put in another guy. Let's pretend for a second that JT Woods is Michael Davis. You can still kind of keep that synergy, that high quality coverage in play while having Derwin James in the box and Bryce Callahan up top. That's very strong, all right? So keep this kind of, idea of JT Woods, Bryce Callahan, the options to back up Derwin James' spot in the back of your minds as we move forward, because we're probably going to be seeing that quite a lot. So for now, I'm going to keep JT Woods there at Derwin James' position as strong safety. Okay? And we could see a variation of these names moving forward too. Next, we've got the star or nickel corner position. Again, Derwin James playing the nickel. And this will place Derwin in the vicinity of guys like, let's say, J.C. Jackson, right? These guys would be playing pretty close together. It could easily be flipped where it's Asante Samuel Jr. This is a pretty deadly combo that carries huge turnover potential, in my opinion, right? Having those guys anywhere near each other makes that part of the field very, very dangerous to throw into. And that's something to definitely keep in mind when, Derwin James is playing that star position role. I think more than likely we're going to see a lot of Bryce Callahan in that role, maybe even Asante Samuel Jr. But just kind of keep that in mind. Derwin James, you could see him line up there, especially if you've got a big tight end, lined up in the slot for any given team. And in these packages, I would imagine Callahan, Woods, or Gilman to play up top. In this case, we're going to keep JT Woods up there, but almost imagine it like that, right? Bryce Callahan manning up top for some of the best coverage you can get out deep with Derwin James in the middle. Now, there are scenarios where the Chargers want to add an additional defensive back in the box, right? Because it does feel like Brandon Staley wants to get as many DBs in there as possible. There's another look that you can look into just like this. Let's talk maybe like nickel or dime, where we do put Derwin in the slot. JT Woods, you could easily see him in the box with Bryce Callahan up top. That's a lot of coverage ability on the field at the same time, and it looks really, really good in terms of defending against the pass, right? While also adding that X factor of Derwin James at a different spot on the field. Now, finally, again, we've got the X position like we were talking about before. And again, this one gets absolutely nuts to me. We're going to move Austin Johnson away. We're going to put Sebastian Joseph Day and Joey Bosa next to each other. And then we're going to move Derwin James down here. This is where things get really crazy. He'd likely be playing beside Bosa or Mack from this position. And last season, you could have seen it next to Bosa, which is, I think, where we mainly saw him line up in this X position. But now you've also got the option of Khalil Mack. Think of it like this, maybe. an overload blitz, right? So let's go ahead and put Bryce Callahan in the slot here. We've got J.C. Jackson, Derwin James playing this X position, right? You got Asante Samuel, J.C. Jackson out there for coverage. It's looking really good. And we're going to need another safety up there at some points. For now, let's go ahead and put J.T. Woods, and then let's put Drew Tranquil back in here. We can see something kind of like this, right? You could realistically blitz all three of these guys off of the edge. Bryce Callahan, Khalil Mack, and Derwin James. That would be absolutely insane. You could drop even, one of them in coverage if you had to, Bryce Callahan or Derwin James into coverage. You could blitz all three of them. You could do a lot with Derwin from this spot. And the fact that guys like Bosa or Mack will likely take the brunt of blockers, as being the natural edge, guys, this will allow Derwin to really turn on the jets and get after the quarterback. That really does open a lot for him is in terms of the talent that he's now surrounded with. Last season, he was likely going from Mike Davis. Our slot guy was, at the time, I think it was Campbell, right? I think Campbell was manning the slot for a while, and then maybe Uchenna Nwosu. You swap those guys out for J.C. Jackson, Callahan, and Mack, things are going to get very, very sticky for opposing offenses. Quarterbacks are going to be running for their lives. So these different formations and stuff like that, very exciting to think about. You could really move these guys every which way that you want. Derwin James's flexibility, absolutely so essential to the Chargers' success this season. And finally having a roster that can give him the freedom to move around is really going to unlock something special for the 2022 season. A newfound freedom, as a matter of fact. These signings are huge for a variety of different reasons, not just Derwin James, right? We've talked a lot about Joey Bosa, the run defense, coverage with J.C. Jackson, but perhaps the best reason of all is being able to really get the very most potential out of a special player like Derwin James, who is going to be that centerpiece of your defense this season. He impacts the team at all levels, which is absolutely massive. And he's going to benefit from every single one of these signings, no matter where he decides to line up. And additionally, he will have quality players holding down any vacancies along the way, right? I have a lot of faith in JT Woods. As much as I like Alohi Gilman, I think JT plays up top a lot more. Gilman, you could even line up in the box if you had to. I think Gilman's a much more run support kind of guy. And you can add even on top of that, in terms of Derwin James, the leadership qualities that he's bringing to this team. And that's something that we've alluded to in the past. It's also super, super important, right? With Staley recruiting so many stars from his system, right? Guys who know the Vic Fangio scheme, while also providing them a leader like Derwin James, it's going to get these, fresh faces a lot more exposure and understanding and chemistry a lot sooner, if that makes sense, right? It gives this team every opportunity to hit the ground running. This defense, these superstars, and above all of them, likely Derwin James, are in for a monster season because of the flexibility that we just bought for Derwin James. Safety, linebacker, star or slot, edge defender. It's absolutely insane all the different kind of ways that you can use Derwin James, and I'm probably not even using all of them. I'm sure there's going to be situations, maybe very rarely, that we could see a Derwin James play out wide as a cornerback. We could see him play. I think he can play pretty much everything but nose tackle, in my opinion. He can play everything but these inside defensive linemen, and he plays it very, very well. So I hope that this made sense. Again, I don't know my X's and O's as well as probably some of you in the comments, so please let me know if there's any corrections to be made. But as I understand it, this is why Derwin James is so flexible and so important to the team. Now, as I alluded to at the top of the episode, how many interceptions do you think that Derwin James is going to come down with this season? I feel like, personally, Derwin is probably going to be in for or around the vicinity of maybe 6 interceptions this season. It could be more, it could be a little bit less, but picks don't really paint the full picture anymore, does it? Especially when you consider all the different ways that you can use a Derwin James. He could stack on top of 5 or 6 picks. He could stack on top of that 3 forced fumbles, 5 or 6 sacks, many tackles, passes defended, you name it. Individually, these numbers may seem all right, 6 interceptions, okay, 6 sacks, all right. But when you bundle them together, it's insane. And we might see one of the best defensive performances in Chargers history with the way the Chargers plan to use Derwin James. So long as he can stay on the field, this should be a very special season for new number 3 on the team. So you guys let me know. And again, I hope that this all came out. I was really hoping to be a little more clear and all that stuff with my explanation because I did put some work into the graphics, but I think it does paint the picture and it does allude to why Derwin James is in for such a big season. And again, when you bundle in all of these, let's say, stats, and maybe even more so important, how good the Chargers defense is going to be this year, Derwin James is going to kind of stand above all of that. He's going to be the guy standing on top like, wow, this guy really led an awesome defense. And that could, in fact, lead to a Defensive Player of the Year award for Derwin James. That's not as important to me as what he offers the team in terms of grabbing more wins, shutting down offenses. But at the same time, it does speak to how highly I regard and anticipate his performance this season. So you guys let me know in the comment section what you think. If you guys got hit with the trick question, you made it here to the end of the video. Also add on to your predictions. How many forced fumbles, how many turnovers in general, how many tackles, any additional stat that you think would boost an impressive season for Derwin James. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. If you did enjoy what we saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. This has been The Director. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. Last thing I'll say, Chargers, get this man extended immediately. Derwin James, the heart and soul of this defense, deserves a blank check from the Bolts.